So we've created a TCP server, and that TCP server gets a connection, and it could read from that connection and write to that connection. And we've also seen how to set a deadline on that connection. So that's all doing a TCP server. Now I'm going to show you how with code you could create a client to dial into that server, and you could either say something to that server or you could, hear what the server, says back. And so we could do that with the net package dial. And so we dial into our TCP connection, localhost 8080, we get our connection, and now we could either read or write to that connection. So this first code sample, and I'm just keeping it simple here, is going to read from the connection, which means we need to run a TCP server that is writing to connections that come in. So 01 writes to connections that come in, and it says, hello from the TCP server, how was your day? Well, I hope. And this is all just educational. And so it's just giving us a little bit of a background and knowledge base in TCP and TCP servers so that we have some understanding what's going on behind the scenes. We'll never actually use this code unless we want to get really custom when we get into doing, building our web apps. We're never going to actually use this code unless you get totally custom, in which case you probably know what you're doing. So if this is boring the heck out of you, you could just jump ahead to understanding the net HTTP package. But otherwise, I think this is interesting. So anyhow, I have 01 running right here. 01, it's running. So it's waiting for connection, and they'll write this to the connection. And so I will come over here and run 05, dial, and this will dial into a TCP server and then read from the connection. So let me just run that. And there we go. It dialed in, and the server wrote back to the connection, and this client read from it. So the next one we're going to look at is how to write to a connection, and that's going to be that one. And I'm going to change directories here. Don't like Windows. And clear this. All right, and run this one, go run main, cool, and allow. So next thing I want to do is I want to be able to create a client that writes to a connection. And for that, I'm going to need a server that reads from a connection. So I'll just run the read server. But to write to the connection, let's see that code first. It's just going to dial, get a connection, and then write to the connection, I dialed you, right? So it's F print line takes a writer, I dialed you. And then this folder right here, 02, is going to get a connection, and then it's going to scan that connection, get the tokens, which are lines, and then print that line. So anything that comes in, it's going to read that and then print it out, and then that's it. So here we go, run this one. That's running, run this one. Voila, I dialed you, code got here. And I could dial this over and over and over. All right, just keep running it, keeps dialing in. And when it dials in, it writes, I dialed you, and this one receives that. And so every time it runs, right, it's a new connection's coming in and saying, go handle that new connection. And so this one will get the connection, defer the connection close, write this, right? And then this program exits, and so the connection gets closed. So this one receives what came in on the connection, prints it out, that connection got closed, and so this exits because it's no longer listening, or it's no longer scanning, because that stream is no longer there. And so then this one exits and says code got here. But then a new this listener is always looping, and anytime something comes in, we accept it, so it launches a new handle because there's a new connection. So that's what's happening in the background, right? The program here is still running the TCP server, and then each time we launch this, dials in, sends something, writes to the connection, closes the connection. This one receives it, pulls it off, and then the connection ends, so it breaks out of that scanning. All right, so that's creating a client to dial in and both read from the connection and write to the connection. In the next video, I'll show you a couple of sample TCP apps.